Welcome back to The Wicked Daughter, managing my aging parent one meltdown at a time. If you're new here, this podcast follows my real caregiving journey. If you'd like to hear how it all began, I recommend starting with episode 1, Welcome to the Right Waiting Room. When we left off, Mom had survived 2 surgeries, multiple blood transfusions, AFib, and enough complications to keep every specialist in the hospital employed. But somehow, things were finally starting to settle down. Or at least that's what I thought. Tuesday, Mom started medication for the AFib. Because of everything she'd been through over the previous week, the doctors decided she needed closer monitoring than the orthopedic floor could provide. They told me Mom was being transferred to the step-down unit. I remember thinking, wait, isn't step down a good thing? It wasn't. She needed a higher level of care because of everything she'd been through. I hated hearing that. But at the same time, I was relieved. Someone would be watching her more closely than they could on the orthopedic floor. By then, I'd stopped pretending I understood everything that was happening. Apparently, hospitals have an unlimited supply of specialists. 3 weeks earlier, I thought there was just a heart doctor. Turns out they're a cardiologist, an electrophysiologist. It seems that when your heart's electrical system decides to throw a tantrum, there's an entirely different specialist for that. I had no idea. The electrophysiologist scheduled Mom for a procedure the following day that would shock her heart back into normal rhythm. Simple enough. Except they couldn't get an IV started. Her poor arms had been poked so many times for blood work that there simply weren't any good veins left. So the procedure was canceled. Only in a hospital can you wait an entire day for a procedure, only to discover the procedure can't happen because you've already had too many other procedures. Then something unexpected happened. Mom's heart settled back into a normal rhythm all on its own. The electrophysiologist decided to hold off on rescheduling the procedure and just keep monitoring her. Finally, something actually got better without another surgery or another consent form. I'll take it. Around the same time, the swelling in Mom's hand started going down. Cardiology finally cleared her to begin physical therapy. Now, before you picture physical therapy as someone getting up and exercising, let me manage your expectations. Day 1 of physical therapy consisted of sitting up and putting her legs on the side of the bed. And even that made her dizzy. So they laid her back down. Day 2. She was still dizzy, just a little less dizzy. Caregiving has a funny way of recalibrating your definition of progress. With a broken leg, Mom wasn't going anywhere for at least 6 to 8 weeks. Walking wasn't even on the table yet. Right now, the goal was much smaller. Could she sit up without getting dizzy? Could she stay up sitting a little longer than yesterday? Some days, progress isn't measured in miles, or even steps. It's measured in minutes. Minutes sitting up, minutes before the dizziness starts, minutes that are just a little bit longer than the day before. She even started eating more. Not much, but enough to make me hopeful. Every bite felt like progress. Every extra minute sitting up felt like progress. Even the fact that she wasn't asking for an enema every day anymore felt like progress. See, caregiving changes you. You start celebrating things that would have horrified your younger self. As the days passed, we started talking about rehab facilities. Think about that. We weren't discussing another surgery. We weren't waiting for another specialist. We weren't trying to survive the next crisis. We were actually talking about what came next. For the first time since the accident, our conversations extended beyond tomorrow. It was the tiniest little exhale. Not a deep breath, just enough to believe that we might finally be heading in the right direction. New Year's Eve arrived. I actually went out for dinner with my husband and some friends. Not exactly a wild night. The restaurant was only 10 minutes from the hospital. That's caregiving partying. After dinner, I stopped back at the hospital to visit Mom before heading to a friend's house for a quiet New Year's Eve celebration. New Year's Day, Mom had another good day. She looked better. She wasn't as tired. She was still in a tremendous amount of pain, but she was making progress. And after everything we'd been through, progress was enough. No more episodes of AFib. Physical therapy continued. We kept looking at rehab options. I spent most of that visit doing what I had become exceptionally good at, encouraging Mom to eat. Just one more bite. Try another sip. I know you don't feel like it. Every calorie felt important. Every little victory mattered. That evening, I drove home. My home. My bed. I hadn't slept there in almost 2 weeks. Ever since the accident, I've been staying at Mom's house so I can get to the hospital quickly if something happened. But now the overnight calls had stopped. Mom was making progress. We were talking about rehab instead of surgeries. I'd finally convinced myself it was okay to sleep in my own bed. And for the first time in 2 weeks, I wasn't waiting for the next crisis. I actually slept soundly. At 2:36 in the morning, my phone rang. You know that feeling when the phone rings in the middle of the night, and before you answer it, your stomach already knows? That. I picked up. The nurse said, "Your mom's aspirated. We had to intubate her." Now, unless you've spent way too much time in hospitals or earned an honorary medical degree from Grey's Anatomy, you may not know what aspiration is. I wasn't sure. It means something goes down the wrong pipe. Instead of going into the stomach, it goes into the lungs. In Mom's case, she had vomited while laying in bed and inhaled it. Thankfully, the nurses were in her room when it happened. They intubated her immediately and put her on a ventilator. That saved her life. Then the nurse said words every caregiver dreads. "She's alive, but we think you should come down." There are moments in your life that you remember forever, not because of what you did, but because of what your body did. I let out a scream that I didn't know I was capable of making. Not crying, not yelling, a howl. The kind that comes from somewhere so deep inside you that you don't even recognize your own voice. Then I completely fell apart. No, no, no! She wasn't gonna die. Not like this. I know my mom is gonna die someday. We all will. She's 88 years old. I've never been in denial about that. But not like this. Not because some asshole couldn't slow down long enough to drive carefully through her neighborhood. Not because she got hit while walking her dog. Not after surviving 2 surgeries. Not after surviving AFib. Not now. Not like this. I remember screaming, "He knew people walked there! He knew! He knew she walked the dog there! He just didn't care!" It wasn't logical. It wasn't productive. It wasn't even really about the driver anymore. It was grief, fear, anger, exhaustion. Every emotion I'd been holding together for the past 2 weeks came out all at once. Up until that moment, I'd had a job. Research the next problem. Find the next doctor. There was usually something I can do. At 2:36 that morning, there was nothing to fix. Only fear. I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember leaving the house. I don't remember locking the door. I don't even remember getting in the car. The next thing I remember, my husband was driving to the hospital. The hospital was about 20 minutes away. 20 of the longest minutes of my life. Somewhere during that drive, I called Pam, my sister from another mother. Pam told me she was getting dressed and would meet me at the hospital. She managed to calm me down enough to call my sister in New York. I don't remember anything else about the drive. When we arrived, it was just after 3 a.m. After hours, you can't just walk into the hospital. You have to go in through the emergency room. Check in. Wait for someone to escort you to the ICU waiting room. Wait. There it was again. Hospital time. Even in an emergency, you wait. I don't know how I didn't lose it all over again while I stood there waiting for someone to take me to the ICU. We were finally escorted, and we waited some more. Eventually, an ICU nurse met us. She told us Mom had been stabilized. I'd be able to see her shortly. Shortly. In hospital time, shortly usually means at least another hour. By the time Pam arrived, I was hanging on by a thread. She wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time since Mom's accident, I completely fell apart. I cried and cried. Not the quiet tears I'd managed to hide over the past few weeks. These were the tears that had been waiting their turn. Mom had already survived being hit by a car. She'd survived surgery. She'd survive another surgery. Now this. How much could one person endure? A nurse came in with an update. Mom was receiving another unit of blood. She was bleeding internally, and they planned to do a CT scan to find the source of the bleeding. It didn't make much sense to me. A little voice inside my head wondered, shouldn't they have looked for the bleeding sooner? Maybe, but by then there wasn't any point looking backwards. I just needed them to find it and make it stop. Finally, at 5:20, they allowed us into the ICU. Nothing prepares you for seeing someone you love on a ventilator. Mom had a breathing tube down her throat, machines surrounding her, wires everywhere. But none of that is what I remember the most. It was her eyes. They were wide open. Mom's eyes are never wide open. She looked intensely aware of everything happening around her. Every sound, every person, every tube, every machine. She was frightened. And somehow seeing the fear in her eyes scared me even more than the ventilator did. Even the nurses were surprised how she looked. They'd given her fentanyl, but Mom's eyes never left mine. She understood exactly what was happening. I hurried to her bedside, took her hand, kissed her face as best I could. Mom, this is only temporary. And I said it again. Mom, this is only temporary. You see, Mom has a DNR. Do not resuscitate. We've had these conversations. I know exactly what she wants, and I have always promised I would honor those wishes. Being kept alive on a machine was her greatest fear. She couldn't talk, but she could hear me. I leaned close. I promise, Mom, this is only temporary. I won't keep you like this. I promise. I needed her to know she wasn't trapped. The nurse explained that an EKG had been done. Earlier, Mom's blood pressure had dropped to a dangerously low level, but the medication had stabilized it. They had given her fentanyl to keep her comfortable. Later, they planned to suction her lungs and her stomach to remove the contents she had aspirated. Those words washed over me like background noise. I wasn't thinking about procedures anymore. I was just thinking about Mom. I did everything I could to keep my own emotions in check because she was watching my face. Caregivers learn something no one teaches you. Sometimes your job isn't fixing anything. Sometimes your job is simply borrowing your loved one's fear until they're strong enough or medicated enough not to carry it themselves. So I smiled, even though I didn't feel like smiling. I squeezed her hand, kissed her forehead, and kept telling Mom, this is only temporary. Over and over and over again. Partly because she needed to hear it, partly because I needed to believe it.